Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. Yes, I'm off. So tonight we're going to talk about chapter 50 in a book titled "After Death," written by Leon Denis. Who this book isn't channeled per se. It's Leon Denis lived late 1800s. I think he died in 1927. He was considered very prominent or prolific or a leader, if you will, and to some extent in Spiritism following the passing of Allan Kardec. So following the end of his physical life. So this book focuses on, obviously, what the title tells us, right? After death. There's several sections in this book. It talks about early civilizations and philosophies, all the way through to subjects from the gospel, Spiritism, doctrine, and chapter 50 is all about after death and what we can do while we're alive to make that a little bit easier. For the most part, this is not my words. It's all from the book. I'll have a little bit of commentary here and there, but again, I can't take any credit for the content. So we ready? Yeah? All right. Does anybody else have a long day today? I am sorry. I feel like I'm a little down, so I'm going to take a deep breath and just soak in some of the positive energy in this place. It's been a long day, so bear with me. What did I do wrong? There we go. So Leon Denis starts off this just chapter with, is anybody immune from suffering or adversity or trials? Right? Rich people, poor people, educated people, right? Uneducated people. Is anybody immune? Like Peter's probably immune from suffering, yeah? But no, right? Nobody is immune, right? No one is immune from suffering. As a rule, it's a rule, right? If you're living on Earth, if you're a human, or if you're in another world that's similar in nature, right? Regenerative planet. This is our life, right? This is why we're here, right? Suffering is in all circumstances, in every age, under every climate. You won't find a human being that doesn't experience suffering, that's never cried or felt sadness. It comes with the species. How's that sound? Yeah, comes with the territory, as they say. Right. Additionally, Leon Denis tells us that we all suffer alike, right? Not just flesh, right? We all bleed, right? Our blood's red, yeah? We all bleed physically, right? We all hurt physically, but in our hearts as well, right? There's no differentiation. None of us are strangers to it, and we all suffer very similarly. The question he asks, and the takeaway from this, though, is what's different between us in regard to suffering? Anybody care to wager or suggest? Man, get up here and finish. You got this, right? Yeah, how we deal with it, how we let it impact us. Actually, to use his words, right? The ways in which it impacts us. You and I, right? Us, right? We can all experience the same negative event. We're gonna have 25 people in the room. We'll have 25 different experiences from the same event. Interpretations, feelings, pain, long-term impact, short-term impact. It'll be completely different. Right, for all of us. Similar in a lot of ways, but different. And that's his point, right? The way we face adversity, our beliefs, right? Do we believe in reincarnation, right? Like most of us in the room do. Do we believe in the law of progress, that we're destined to improve, right? That it's a law, we can't avoid it. Do we believe in cause and effect, and is our destiny determined? These are all the questions he's asking. And obviously our answers to those, our belief system, our philosophy on these things, will definitely impact the way we suffer. And as I like to show frequently is this slide, yeah? Again, I can't take credit. I borrowed it or stole it from Livia, and I think she borrowed it from somebody else, yeah? But it basically sets forth for us a picture, right? A graphic of our individual spirit. Each one of us created simple and lacking knowledge, right? The bottom left, way back when, right? Our first life after being created, and subsequent lives, right? And evolutions, working our way up to be a pure spirit. Obviously, if we're living on earth, for the most part, we're in that third order someplace with a lot of work left to do. But little by little, making progress. Everybody okay with not being a good spirit in the middle? I would never forget one of my first classes in this center. Anybody remember Simone Neto? Yeah, she was one of our students. I think Tim, you were in that class. She was very upset. We had quite the discussion. What do you mean I'm not a good spirit? I get a smile every time I think of her reaction to that. But again, it's all relative. Yeah, if we're living on earth, if we're suffering, if we're experiencing a life again in the flesh like this, it's because we are more closely tied to matter, more closely tied to ego and vice, right? Than we are to love and peace and Christ-like behavior. Make sense? So don't beat yourself up, right? We're a work in progress. So he goes on to tell us that as we get to this point, right, if we do believe right, in these things, then we no longer will consider as suffering the loss of a loved one, right? Not suffering. I mean, it's okay to grieve. If I die tomorrow, shed a tear. Okay, it's okay to cry if I depart. All right. My point is, his point is, we won't consider the loss of a loved one or hardships or misery as misfortune. We'll be sad. We'll experience loss. We'll experience pain. We will go through grief, right? And that's okay. Don't deprive yourself. Don't expect yourself not to experience that. But it won't be a misfortune, right? The loss of a loved one is hard, right? Hardships of any kind, misery of any kind is challenging. But in that moment, in that experience, and how we let it impact us is good fortune. We have the opportunity during these times to grieve, obviously, but how do we face a hardship? You know, we lose our job, or somebody breaks in to our identity and takes our money, right? We have some things we can do, right? We can deal with that in a rational way, in a righteous way, or we can seek revenge, right? Or get mad and do things to other people, or steal from others because we were stolen from, right? We can do that thing. So we have the choice of how we deal with it. So his point here is, whatever we experience, whatever hardship we experience, it's how we react to it that creates this opportunity to grow as a result. He goes on and clarifies, right, that misfortune going forward, if we accept this mindset, this belief that it's going to be understood as everything that tarnishes us or diminishes us or things that hinder our advancement, are all opportunities to grow, as we've talked about. If you think about some of the worst moments or feelings in your life, right? When we look back on those things, what usually came out of them besides the pain? Growth, yeah? We learn from our mistakes, hopefully. Maybe not the first time, the second time, who knows, right? But over time, if we take this approach, right, this misfortune will be understood as an opportunity to grow, and also that it's nobody's fault but our own, right? Cause and effect dictates that whatever we're experiencing today is a direct correlation or a direct response to choices we've made in the past, either in this life or previous lives. So as we experience things, I don't know about you. I can remember. I have a brother, great guy, but he's got the worst luck in the world, right? We used to joke. Actually, not joke. It was not funny. I guess we did joke. It's not funny. It's not funny. Like he had a gray cloud over his head, you know. If it could go wrong, it happened to my brother. To this day, it just seems like he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now I know, right, that these are things that are playing out, that are developing, that are happening because of choices he's made. Just like my experiences, right, and yours. We're all in the same boat. All right, so we use suffering and trials and tribulation. All of these are synonymous, right? different words for the same thing, right? And these trials, Leon Denis reminds us that they simply prepare the soul for elevation. Think of anything that can go wrong, right? Or feel like it's wrong, or adversity that you can face, and your ability to accept, evolve, and grow is there for you. Remember, as we progress morally in this life, when we pass, right, and then this body ends, do those morals and that character, do they disappear from the spirit? They do not, right? Your spirit maintains your level of moral involvement. Doesn't go backwards. Does my bank account go with me? Do my clothes go with me? Does my car go with me? Absolutely not. My material things stay, but moral development stays with us. So the more we grow morally, right, in this life, we're preparing and we're elevating more and more each time. The other thing he tells us is that we can all hope and trust that we're paying off our previous wrongs, our debts, as he says. Trials, tribulations, atonement, right? We are here today living this life, being faced with adversity created by our choices in the past, and now we have the opportunity to evolve, to make amends. We can fail again, right? We won't do everything the way we hope. So we're always growing, we're always facing opportunities. He goes on to say that pain in its various forms is the supreme remedy for our imperfections and disabilities of the soul. And this comes down to what he describes as the law of justice and moral balance. Right? So when I think of balance, I think of my checkbook, right? What's my balance, right? Positive, negative, right? At some point, our choices, our actions, our deeds, right, in this life will be balanced. We will atone for them, just as we're atoning for previous actions, right? And essentially, the law of justice dictates that the moral trials that impact us are the result of our previous wrongs, and he describes this as similar to bitter medicine or painful surgeries of the body. Right? Adversity is a great healer. I love that analogy that those previous wrongs and the trials that we face are like bitter medicine or painful surgeries, right? Because if you think about it, right, your gallbladder gets inflamed and it's poisoned, right? It's got to come out, right? That's a terrible surgery to some degree, and there's recovery involved. But by pulling out that failed organ, you get better, right? I just had a patient. I hadn't seen him in months, but he almost died, right? But he went through some really bad times. They took out his gallbladder, and he's fine now. He's making a full recovery. So just like we can have that damage of the flesh or that surgery of the flesh, the emotional trauma, the emotional pain, the tragedy or the perceived tragedy, and our interaction with it, our ability to overcome it, right, is the same for our soul, for our morals. Make sense? I'm glad. Awesome. So he reiterates, right, that adversity is indeed necessary for our advancement, and that it's not necessarily, the adversity itself is important, but it's appreciating the adversity that's key. How many of you appreciate your pain? Right? That to me, and it just goes to show how much work I have to do, right? To me, it's hard to think I'm supposed to appreciate my pain. Right? I understand it in words, but I tell you what, man, my back's sore today. It hurts, right? Did you do that workout? Yeah. Right? Exactly. My back's sore, and I don't appreciate that, right? I had a difficult meeting today with a team member that's causing me some pain professionally. It's hard to appreciate that. But if I stop and I pause just for a minute, right, well, maybe for a couple minutes, right? It takes a little bit of time, and I think about it, what's happening? My back, I appreciate it if I think about it because it's telling me I need to maybe slow down or work on my form, or maybe I gotta lose a few more pounds because maybe that's why I hurt my back, right? It's making me think how I can reduce the pain. The person at work that's kind of causing me problems, right? 10 years ago, I would have fired this guy. Just boom, get out of here, right? Probably would have said 12 years ago, 13 years ago, maybe not 10, right? And I wouldn't have cared, right? But what I know for sure is this situation in the office right now is teaching me patience. It's teaching me to see, appreciate the positives even in the midst of the tribulation. And it's making me aware that there could be changes in a process that could be better for the organization. Not necessarily my ego or my pride, right? But could be better for the organization. So I appreciate the pain this guy's causing me tonight, right? I didn't so much at 11:30 this morning. All right. So, anyways, I hope does that make sense? All right, cool. And Leon Denny reminds us, right, that this adversity, right, these challenges that we face, it gives birth to mercy, tenderness, and affection. Through the pain, through the tribulation, we have the ability to find in us mercy for the person causing us the pain. Sometimes just mercy on ourselves, right? But mercy towards our offender, right? Towards our enemy. Tenderness towards the parties involved. Again, 12, 13 years ago, I would not have been tender in this situation. I was tender today, right? And affection. It breeds these opportunities to build that within us. All right. Again, all these synonyms, right? Synonyms. Suffering, pain, trials, adversity. He tells us that it should teach us how to think and pray. Well, I didn't pray at the office today. Maybe I should have, but I definitely did a lot of thinking, right? So I can attest to that being true. And I think the whole praying piece, teaching us to pray, I'm convinced that I don't do enough of that. I'm trying to do more. So I understand what he means here, that in these times of trials and tribulations, I believe, and I think you believe too, that we have free will, and we ultimately are responsible for our choices, right? But I really believe in the idea, in the truth. I believe that we have a guardian angel or mentors, right? Spirits that are with us, that send us assistance, that send us messages, intuition, call it whatever you want, right? So I'm convinced that what he's telling us here ties into the thinking part, slows you down. And if you can just stop during these hard times and just a quick prayer, just calm yourself, meditate briefly, and connect with that guide, with that angel, with that mentor, you're going to make a better choice. So that was a good reminder for me that I need to do more of that. Because if we can do that, right, it's going to show us the way to a wisdom and a truth in a situation that we may not have seen 30 seconds before that, or if we just reacted emotionally or instinctually with that fight or flight limbic system that's in all of us, and that animal in us. And he goes on to say that the greatest of all work, right, this suffering, it's the greatest of all work, and it educates and directs us towards the future. That only pain can soften our hearts and rekindle the fire in our souls. I remember going through a very painful experience and praying for a different outcome, that actually happened. And it didn't happen, right? And at that point in my life, I felt forsaken. I felt forgotten. I felt victimized, right? And then, who knows, time passes, right? And I didn't get what I prayed for, but I got what I needed, right? And this is a good reminder that at the time you're going through this, you don't always see the positive things. You don't always realize the growth at the moment. But days, weeks, months, even years later, it can dawn on you exactly what came out of the suffering. So, I view my life in terms of BS and AS. This is mine. This is not Leon Denny. Anybody want to guess what BS and AS stand for? Think of a difficult time. I'll give you the answer in a minute, but I'll give you a chance to figure it out. Think of a difficult trial that you faced, and how did you handle it? BS and AS. What do you think? What's that?
Badly suffering?
Well, I could see that. I was thinking this. right? Before Spiritism and after Spiritism, right? So just think about something you experienced before you necessarily practiced Spiritism or studied Spiritism. And think about how you handled it. And then ponder, like I just shared a story with you, right, that happened just today, right? 12, 13 years ago, I would have handled it differently, right? Spiritism, its teachings, right? The teachings of Christ, the gospel, even though I don't do enough of it, right, every day, it over time. Think about. I tell this story with my patients. I'm an audiologist, so I help people hear better, right? And I talk about noise exposure, right? If you had a razor and you just nicked your finger once, not a big deal, right? So think of that as noise exposure, right? But if you nicked your finger every day with a razor over years, right, you're not going to have an arm, right? And that's what noise does to the auditory system. Noise today, tomorrow, for 20 years of working in a factory, you lose a lot of your hearing. So when we equate that or try to find that parallel with good things, right? Daily action, positive daily action, just one little thing every day. Over how long have I been coming here, Peter? 13 years. Gabrielle is 13. The twins are going to be 13, so almost 13 years, right? Guess what? It changes you, not drastically overnight. And I'm by no means anywhere close to being as morally evolved as other people I know or what my ultimate goal is. But little by little, I can see the difference in my life before Spiritism and after Spiritism. The way I react, the way I plan, the way I handle conflict, right? Again, I make mistakes every day, but definitely a huge difference. Just a little bit every day can go a long way. And let's continue then, right? And the reason I tell you that story about me and all of us, right? We all have our story in terms of why we're here or how long we've come here or how it's impacted our lives. But the reason I share that with you now is Leon Denis goes on to tell us that you don't just fight adversity because it's fun or it's easy or it's challenging, right? Or because you made the choice to necessarily. It's our responsibility. It's a duty, right? If you don't fight it, you're definitely not doing what you're supposed to do, right? So fighting adversity is a responsibility. It's a duty. He goes on to say pretty strongly, it's cowardly to abandon oneself to laziness and constant suffering. Right? How many of you been there? I can think of 18 months in grad school. I ordered Gumby pizza for dinner and basically only got up to go to class, right? So that's another story. I won't bore you with that one. I'll save that for another lecture. But my point is, in that period, right, when we get like that, right, if we abandon oneself to laziness and constant suffering, it's cowardly, right? We all know people, and maybe we've had experiences ourselves, that no matter when you see them, what time of day, inside, outside, at the mall, at church, in the center, right, at a Christmas party, they're miserable. How you doing? Let me tell you, right? And they got a story for you, right? They're just constantly suffering, right? We're reminded here that you can't do that. Well, you can do that, but don't do that. It's not going to expedite evolving. In fact, he says that overcoming adversity exerts and develops our intelligence and moral growth. Rebelling against the law of progress is just as futile as resisting the laws of distance and gravity. You can't. You can try, you know. You can slow down your fall. I used to skydive a lot, right? And I could slow down my fall, right? Bigger parachutes, wingsuits, slow flight, right? Jump out of a plane higher up as opposed to lower, right? Extend that whole process. But inevitably, gravity took me to the ground, right? Adversity is going to force us to fight, right? To face, to make better choices. We don't have a choice. It's the law, like physics, like science, right? Like gravity. And what's he saying? Distance and gravity. It's inevitable. Does that seem too strong or does it make sense? What are we waiting for then? Right? It's rational. We can explain it. We can verbalize it. But how many of us get caught up in the same old tapes. I call it tapes, right? I programmed up here the tapes I listened to as a kid, the tapes I've listened to for 50 years. It's hard to change those tapes sometimes. So what are we waiting for? And how do we change it? How do we endure? How do we get this endurance and build up to it? And what's that?
You said it. It's just a way of finding a way to feel like this every day, which is not common to us. We got creatures of habit, and we are used to feel different. When you stop a little and think, you can refocus. When you just go, just react, you just do your normal life. So think about spiritism and all the teachings. Just happen if something interrupt your flow, your day. So prayer is a great way to interrupt your flow.
That's what I hear you saying. Like we act instinctually, we act out of habit, and habit, as you've talked about many times.
We're waiting for some kind of wisdom to teach us how to do it every day.
Right.
It's really hard.
And you read the reading, right? What did you say today? You reminded me of the longest journey starts with what? One step, right? Yeah. What was here? I forget. It wasn't that. It was something different.
Can you open the chapter?
Yeah, 14, right?
14, first paragraph.
Some people wait for extraordinary moments and special occasions that most likely will not materialize. It's not so much what you do, but how you do it that will make you invaluable. Here it is. A giant tree begins as a tiny seed. Perfect. It's beautiful. So it's amazing how often this book ties into the lecture of the night, yeah? So we were simple and lacking knowledge when we were first created, ignorant, if you will. And here we are today, right? All in our various stages of evolution, various progression on that chart that I showed you, each very different, but yet almost the same, helping each other, growing, and going through our thing. And like Peter said, we are in habit mode sometimes, we act instinctually, but we can stop at any moment, say a quick prayer, and try to connect and alter the path that we're on. Thank you, guys, for contributing. All right, we're almost there. Wait, till 9 o'clock, right, Tim?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
10. So this is nice. I like how he reminds us, and others do this too. This is a common theme, right, in a lot of the books that we read. He tells us humankind is improving slowly but steadily, one soul at a time, one tragedy at a time, life after life of lessening trials, right? As we progress, right, not only us as individual spirits will our suffering lessen as we evolve, but Earth and other planets as a whole, as the spirits that inhabit those planets lighten and get less attached to material and become closer to that love and that pureness. The planet evolves, right, and changes. And Earth will evolve at some point as well, as it is little by little. And this happens, right, until we free ourselves. This will be slowed down or not happen until we free ourselves from the bonds of vice, ego, and pride. I've told you what ego stands for to me, right? Ego, edging God out. That's how I like to think of ego, right? Because if I'm all caught up in me, right, and my big head, and I can control everything, there's no room for God in my life, right? So edging God out, that's how I like to think of ego. All right. He reiterates, right, at the end of this life, right, as we depart the material body, what is there to be afraid of, he asks, right? Did we renounce ego, vice, and pride? Did we sacrifice our own interests to the truth and duty? Did we strive for moral evolvement? There's a lot of heavy questions there. I don't know if I want to answer those tonight, right? I don't know. There's a lot of heavy questions, but he says, right, what's waiting for us, right? When after death, right? What's waiting for us? He says the more yes responses from the list of these questions, right? The more yeses, right? The closer we are to not returning to the earth, right? Because why do we keep coming back to earth? Because we're not finished. Our energy, our spirit, our morals are still vibrationally in sync with the earth. Until we elevate ourselves, we'll continue to come back. The more trials we overcome, right, the more clearly we will see brilliant milestones and lessening anguish, hearts filled with love and faith. So that's all we're waiting for, right? Is to be more like, be able to answer yes to these questions. Well, I'm pretty sure if I die tonight, I'm coming back, right? Because I can't say yes to all of these. What's the hardest on that list for you guys? I think it's the one in the middle. Ego, vice, and pride. Maybe not so much vice anymore, right? But pride's a killer sometimes. Ego. I think I strive for moral evolvement. I bet you all think, and you all try to be morally evolved. I'm 100% sure of it. I don't think any of us wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a scumbag today. I really don't think anybody in this place does that, right? But we don't always hit the mark. What is there to be afraid of? I'm still afraid sometimes. Not so much about dying, but about not dying now. Why? I got 3 little kids, right? But I shouldn't be afraid of that. If I go today, there's a reason, there's a purpose. But that still scares me, right? So I don't know. I'm lamenting or spending too much time on this. But I think it's a valuable set of questions. And I think that what's awaiting us slide is huge. That's the goal, right? That's where we're trying to get to. How many of you ever heard of vision boards or dream boards? Right? That's a material. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be material, but I remember it in different sales positions. The sales manager always wanted you to put your material goals on a poster board or something, right? So that you work harder or sell more stuff. But it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be material things. It could be spiritual things. So, and that's what, in this context, to me, that's my spiritual or my moral vision board. This is what I'm striving for. And sure enough, if I keep that in the forefront, my thoughts, my words, and my actions will lead me to that truth. I believe that, little by little. All right, enough of that. So Leon Denis also tells us, right, that the more that we evolve, the more we almost regret for not having suffered enough. Does that like just make you go, wait, hold on, what did he say? The more that we evolve, the more we almost regret not having suffered enough. Do any of you wish for more suffering? Are you there yet? I'm not, man. So I guess I'm coming back to earth, right? Man. But that almost sounds beautiful, though, if you stop and think about it. And what is that? What image does that put in my mind? Reminds me of Christ on the cross, praying for his murderers, right? Finding mercy for them. Crazy. Beautiful. Anyways, I could get lost in that whole idea for a while. So the next question is, right, and this is an important one, how can we expedite our spiritual evolution? Simple question for you. This is me now asking the question. Do you have a hobby? You don't have to tell me what it is, but how much time do you spend on it a week?
3 to 4 hours.
All right, who else has a hobby? Anybody? Come on. Nobody? You got a hobby? How much time a week how many hours a week do you spend on it?
It depends, but at least 2 or 3.
Okay, 2 or 3 hours. All right. I have a hobby. I probably spend 6 hours a week on it, 5 or 6 hours a week. So the question is, and that's great. I'm not saying hobbies are bad. Hobbies are great. I hope you have 2 or 3 of them. But the question is, why do we indulge ourselves in hobbies, right? Why do we have them? They make us feel good. There's a goal in them usually, right? Something, whether it's relaxation or whatever it might be, right? If we go back, where is it? Never mind. I'm going to do this with my words, not a slide. So my hobby, right, is about an hour a day of my life, give or take. You know how much time that is? 4% of my day. That's a pretty decent amount of time, right? The reason I put this in that perspective is if we're talking about, I got to go back because I love this slide. Right? Where is it? Peter, tell me when you see it. The more yes responses, right? Here they are, right here. If this is my vision board, if this is the recipe for moral development, if this is the recipe for evolving, if this is the recipe for less suffering and pain, right? And evolving to that Christ-like perfection one day. Ask me how much time I spend on that a day. You think it's 4% of my day? Is it 4% of your day? I'm not judging, I'm just asking. Because I can tell you right now, I spend 4% of my day on my hobby. I don't spend 4% of my day on this stuff. Not consciously, anyways. So that's when I get mad at myself and I kick myself. And I'm not kicking you, I'm not mad at you. What I'm saying is, I need to do more than I'm doing. And I'm going to try harder. But I have a material hobby that is 4% of my day. And that's great. But I should be spending at least the same amount of time on this, because that's how important this is. So, that being said, again, I'm not beating anybody up. I'm not even going to beat myself up. I'm going to take these words from, I'm pretty sure this was Chico Xavier that said this, right? Right? Though nobody can go back. I can't go back. You can't go back and change the past, right? Though no one can go back and make a new beginning, anyone can start over and make a new ending. So, I will invite all of you to leave here tonight thinking about the ending that you want, and maybe committing a little bit more time every day to making it happen. Because I'm going to make that commitment tonight. So thank you for putting up with this tired old man. Thank you for your attention and for the opportunity to share what I learned in chapter 50. Have a good